A very good morning and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to today's Hindu News Analysis for 25th April 2024, where we shall be analyzing UPSC relevant important articles from the Hindu Newspaper, today's edition, and that is the New Delhi publication. So let's have a look at 4 articles which need a detailed analysis from mains perspective, which range from first one. What are certain challenges that are being experienced by Indian seafarers, that is, Indian sailors, Indian fishermen population, and Indian Navy? Certain people who are employed in the naval sector are on an ongoing basis, they are experiencing threats and massive insecurity. So what does the government really propose to do about that? The second article for the mains talks about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. In fact, it is a critical analysis of Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0, which can also be known as health and well-being vertical. So what are certain discrepancies in the program? Why can it not be labeled as successful? Third article here talks about National Clean Air Program. Today, as we are seeing summer temperatures rising to an unprecedented high, at the same time we are also witnessing that PM or particulate matter pollution in the air of most of Indian metro cities is still very, very high. So where has the National Clean Air Program really failed to do its part? The last article here talks about a new discovery in science, typically in the field of medical research, and we are talking about how scientists have discovered a very powerful antidote, a medication against the toxin of Cobra snake. Now, given that deaths by snake bite are a neglected area in even medical research, however, a major cause behind deaths, disabilities in rural Indian population. A quick look at that, and then we have 2 short articles that are relevant for prelims. The first one talks about how the Supreme Court has critically stated that Assam government's move to reduce the area of Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary is not a very wise decision. In fact, the Supreme Court wants that a proper committee should investigate the issue so that we can create a compromise between, on the one hand, endangered wildlife of this area, and on the other hand, the livelihood and the residential claims of the marginalized communities who are living in the periphery of Pobitra Wildlife Sanctuary. The last article for prelims and the last article for today talks about how the Supreme Court has categorically convinced people by its jurisdiction that the electronic voter machines are absolutely transparent. There is no need to worry about their opaqueness, or there is no need to worry that they can be manipulated. In fact, the Supreme Court believes that the machines and the microcontrollers it is using are agonistic. They do not do any bias on the basis of any particular party symbol or a candidate. So on this note, let's begin analyzing in detail the first article for today, which has been picked up from page 6. This is relevant to international relations, and we are talking about problems being experienced by Indian sailors or seafarers. Why has this issue come to light? It is because of the recent attacks that are ongoing on the commercial ships and vessels, particularly in the area of Red Sea. Now, we all know ever since the Israel and Palestine war broke out, the Houthi rebels, the Yemen-based Houthi rebels, have been attacking various naval vehicles that are traversing the Red Sea area, particularly the western naval vessels. But at the same time, the entire area is very, very prone to bombing and attacks right now, which has endangered the lives of Indian seafarers too. At the same time, when we talk about the Hormuz Strait, we are talking about an area where constantly sea piracy is going on. At the same time, you might have also heard about how Somalian pirates have also been hijacking various naval vehicles, and this activity has in fact increased a little too much since 2023. So despite all the protocols by international maritime organization. These attacks and such insecurities are ongoing. And apart from that, there are many other problems which are being experienced constantly by the seafarers. The article is pitching a voice for the help that the government should provide on an urgent basis for the seafaring community. So the key argument of the article is that India today is playing a very critical role in keeping the global shipping industry running. Indeed, India's contribution is massive here. But what is getting neglected is the safety and welfare of our seafaring staff. Because just like we are talking about the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea, constantly getting attacked by militants and extremist groups, there is a threat on any commercial vehicle that is navigating through that region. And therefore, India has raised a very legitimate concern in the 111th session of International Maritime Organization's Legal Committee. In this panel, India has said that certain critical issues such as safety of sailors, their security, they're being hired for job on the basis of a permanent, proper, systematic contract. Besides, broader maritime security challenges should be taken care of. India has stressed the need for a systematic approach to maritime security, therefore, and much better conditions for all the seafaring staff. The piracy concerns typically have been very, very alarming. For example, the recent attack that was done in the wake of piracy on the Somalian coast, which included hijacking of certain sailors. This is pointing out to how from 2023 onwards, now ever since these conflicts are on the rise, ever since West Asia has become a very, very vulnerable region, even attempts at piracy have skyrocketed like never before. For example, in December 2023 and January 24, Somali pirates were attacking vehicles such as MV Ruin, as well as MV Leela Norfolk. So India has called for better monitoring by the international community. India has also spoken about more strong measures to curb such piracy attempts and international cooperation towards the same. Not only to stop piracy, but also to protect the people who are sailing, the seafarer community. And all this should be implemented in the lines of various protocols created by United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, the UN clause as we call it. Similarly, another chapter that the article highlights is that many times sailors are getting hired on improper contract basis. So which means we are talking about a hidden, unorganized job that is prevalent even in the maritime segment. So we are talking about how unlawful, unhealthy, illegitimate recruitment practices are impacting the well-being of these sailors. For example, many times industries settled in countries that are oil rich. Now we can talk about Iran here. We can talk about certain countries of the Middle East. They are hosting and housing certain shipping companies which outsource labor. Now given that India provides massive labor for the unorganized sector, not only in the construction sector but also in the oil, petroleum, shipping sector. So it is these laborers who are getting hired by international recruiters to work for companies that are based offshore, abroad, outside India. Now problem is that here, Indian seafarers, in the prospect of a better job and a better payment, they get lured into working for such companies, whereas in reality the contracts are very, very biased. They do not pay the amount that they state. Apart from that, they also jeopardize. They put the lives of these sailors in danger without taking adequate measures for their security before sending them off to commercial sea missions. This is something also that the article is highlighting. The article says that in the ongoing platform, India has also stressed the importance of international coordination to solve the problem of seafarers' right, standard salary, proper contract for job, complete safety and security ensured by the hiring companies and the respective governments of such companies under the Maritime Labour Convention of 2006. Apart from that, the article is also saying there are many other problems which are, in fact, haunting the seafarers. For example, most of them do not have adequate legal representation. They lack a voice. They lack negotiation power when it comes to being unfairly treated, and most of them are not even aware of their rights. Now, better international cooperation, therefore, is the need of the hour when it comes to encouraging uninterrupted safe navigation, especially at a time when, on the one hand, geopolitical problems are increasing, and on the other hand, shipping segment is also rising. So, to create a balance between expanding maritime trade and, on the other hand, conflicts and wars becomes critical for the welfare of the seafaring community. Now, just 3 years ago, the Maritime Union of India highlighted that 40% increase has happened in the case of kidnapping and abductions of Indian sailors in the Gulf of Guinea area, with about 134 cases of assault, injury and threats that were also reported. For example, there have been also cases where kidnapping of 20 Indian nationals took place from the vehicle MT Duke, where on the western coast of Africa, and the ship owners were paying ransoms. It highlights the danger that the seafarers are constantly facing. Now, again, there is a paradox here that despite the fact that during COVID-19 pandemic, when most of the countries were experiencing supply chain blockages, it was the Indian sailing community that was constantly contributing to persistent, uninterrupted sea trade. They were still navigating, ensuring a proper supply chain, availability of imports. And despite that, today they are facing a situation where the government has not done, not just the Indian government, but government across the world. Global community has not done enough to provide justice and safety to these sailors. Now, human rights has to be prioritized at sea, which means that Indian government recently, in alignment with NHRC, the National Human Rights Commission, launched a platform called Human Rights at Sea. Under this initiative, certain reports were investigated, certain surveys were done, and it highlighted that many Indian sailors are unfairly being held in foreign jails. They are languishing in prisons abroad without getting any fair hearing. This also kind of rattles you about the ongoing case about the Yemen lady whose mother has travelled there to just seek justice for her daughter. And many people are raising questions that whether Indian labour, just for better payment and more job security, travelling to countries of Middle East, would that be a fair thing? Now, you might also remember that just about a week back, there were reports in the Hindu that Indian government itself was sending certain labourers from UP, Haryana to work in Israel. And paradoxically, just 3 days later, there was a report where the Indian government had prohibited any travel to countries like Israel, or for that matter, Ukraine, or any other war-torn nation right now. So these paradoxes highlight that sometimes the fate of unorganized workers is so dismal. It is so sad that their safety, their security, their human rights, they are getting traded off just because they need more money. So in the lieu of payment, here lives are at risk. So similarly, the report here also highlights that how these people are stranded abroad without any legal arbitration being given to them. They are subjected to illegal detentions. Now let's remember, same situation happens even in the case of Indian fishermen. There was a debate about certain islands between India and Sri Lanka. There as well, many fishermen who unknowingly cross the territorial waters, and then what happens? As soon as they are crossing the territorial zone, they get easily captured, and then they are just caught up in foreign prisons. It takes years, sometimes decades, for the government to negotiate their freedom from other neighboring countries. So these are certain issues that the article highlights that more needs to be done, not only to make the sailing staff aware of laws, but also to make them aware about what rights, what legal rights do they have. The government needs to be more proactive in providing them such awareness. Human Rights at Sea has highlighted massive abuses against Indian seafarers, including 200 being held in foreign jails, 65 stranded in Indonesia for about, say, 151 days. So imagine people sailing abroad to earn money and then languishing in foreign prison for months altogether, where there is no money, there is no salary, no livelihood. At the same time, there's no guarantee for being free from these jails. So this highlights a very dismal specter when it comes to our seafarer community. And let's also remember that despite these risks, Indian seafarers are still committed to their work. Now, whether you talk about the junior naval staff, or whether you talk about Indian fishermen, whether you talk about people who are traveling on commercial ships, all of them are still working in a very committed basis in this industry. So which means we need to improve their rights and their better steps for their protection. So currently 9.35% of global seafaring population in India aims to increase its share to 20% in the next just 10 to 20 years from 9.35%. Indian population which is seafaring shall shoot up to 20%, which means many more people will work in this sector. So therefore, better management of shipping companies, more transparency is the need of the hour. The government support and protection is badly needed in the wake of the recent security threats that these people are facing, in the wake of many fake contracts that have been, unjustly being offered to Indian seafarer workers. So therefore, what needs to be done? Much better job contracts, much better systematic payments, much better security, absolute avoidance of routes which are in danger, and much better negotiation with foreign governments in case where these people are on an illegal basis being held and detained outside. So that's what the article talks about. The second article for the day has been picked up from page 7, and it is a social issue. It is talking about the reality of Swachh Bharat Mission. Now, the article seems rather critical of the Swachh Bharat Mission. Now, let's remember that Swachh Bharat Mission initially was launched when back in 2015-2016 period, when it was initially rolled out. It spoke about 2 or 3 broad targets. One target was to eliminate manual scavenging in India. Let's remember that many districts and certain villages even today, they do not have the provision of push, and they do not have the provision for proper systematic sanitation and toilets, pour flush toilets. In that case, what happens? Still people resort to dry latrines, and this is nothing short of a human abuse, because the more people are resorting to open defecation and dry latrines, the more people have to be subjected to cleaning in such situations. More people are having to resort to manually cleaning this. So therefore, manual scavenging is something that's a direct outcome of open defecation. So one target of the Swachh Bharat Mission Chapter 1, when it was initially launched, was to completely abolish manual scavenging by stopping open defecation. In fact, many districts in India, particularly in Kerala, initially aimed to have achieved the certificate of being OD+. You must have seen it, sometimes OD++, which means they are completely free of open defecation, and all of them have provided systematic sanitation to people. However, that was just one target. Another target was to create avid, massive, intense cleaning campaign. One of the third targets was also to provide for last mile sanitation connection, including the urban, the rural and peri-urban areas or suburban areas. Now, these were certain targets behind Swachh Bharat Mission initially, but then it was relaunched in 2021 on mission mode. Then it was known as Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0. It came with a new name which was known as Health and Wellbeing Vertical. What was new here? What was new was to completely prohibit any form of implied or direct untouchability. Now, not only does the Article 17 of Indian Constitution totally prohibit untouchability, it is a total right. Total right that can be claimed against state as well as any individual. Similarly, we know that we have the Untouchability Prohibition Act 1955, which was later named in 1976 as Civil Rights Act, under which also there is no untouchability that can be practiced legally in any part of India. It's a crime. Later, the government also rolled out the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe POA, Prevention of Atrocities Act, initially in 1989, much later amended in 2015 as well as in 2019. It was made much more stringent now, that any attempt of provocating somebody on caste lines, tribal lines is absolutely not acceptable by the law. It's punishable severely. But Despite that, and despite the commitment of Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 of completely abolishing untouchability, the Honorable Indian Prime Minister Shri Modi ji also said during this time, when it was being launched, that today manual scavenging is the worst surviving symbol of untouchability. So therefore it has to be prohibited. Why? Because most of the people who are resorting to manual scavenging are invariably in India coming from the lower caste backgrounds, typically the Dalit community. Because age-old caste discrimination has led to this problem. Since the Dalit community and many other lower castes in India were subjected to untouchability from ages, it was them who resorted to manual scavenging. Besides, ages of intergenerational poverty and lack of education left them with no better jobs, and therefore they had to take up these low-paying and inhuman jobs. Hence, the mission behind Swachh Bharat Abhiyan was to abandon any kind of open defecation, hence manual scavenging and hence untouchability. But the article says that all of these missions have not been completely successful. Why? Although initially when the Swachh Bharat mission was launched, there was a lot of campaigning, there was a lot of hoopla around it. People were happy. We celebrated concepts like Swachhata Pakhwada, which means for 15 days there was an intense cleaning mission. The government was organizing Shramdan, which means people were voluntarily coming from various walks of life and cleaning their surroundings. So everything looked very beautiful. And indeed, there was success achieved. There is no denying to that. But whether this success was complete, that's questionable. Because recently India's rank in the Environment Performance Index EPI 2022 has been very low. It's 180. I mean, it's very, very bottom. It's very, very lowly ranked as compared to other countries. Now, if this EPI is ranking countries on the basis of climate change performance, on the basis of environmental health, and on the basis of ecosystem vitality, then why was India such lowly ranked? Now, this index, it's measuring 40 performance indicators across 11 issues, which include categories like air quality, drinking water, more important, sanitation. Now, if in a sanitation index, India today is ranking as low as 180, it is pointing out to the fact that somewhere we have missed when it comes to achieving the targets of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Why? What happened? What went wrong really? So this is what went wrong. The government, with a lot of enthusiasm, celebrated the year 2015 with one such year where the government was very proactive about introducing various missions, not only Swachh Bharat but also missions like Smart City Mission, mission like Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, the Amrut Mission as we call it. We also inaugurated certain other missions such as the Hriday Mission to reinvigorate India's religious heritage sites. We talk about the National Clean Air Program. So many of them came at a time when one previous mission called JNNURM, the Jawaharlal Mission on Urban Rejuvenation, closed down. It closed in 2015 and many other missions came to take its place in 2015. But now, where did Swachh Bharat Mission fail? So the article says that the city governments today under the Swachh Bharat missions are being told to completely become digitized. For better cleaning, the city governments are being encouraged to buy and invest in certain cleaning machines, sometimes which can be as expensive as rupees 1 crore per machine. Now, these machines will sweep the roads on a fixed time period basis every day or once a week. Although these machines have been put to task, the real problem comes when it comes to maintaining them. Now, these are sophisticated technologies and most of these machines are using parts that are imported. So once they stop functioning, given the roughness of Indian road terrain, given the sheer amount of traffic that runs on Indian roads every day, given the lack of knowledge regarding upkeep of these machines on the part of municipal staff, it's very difficult to maintain them. Plus the cost at which they are coming. Now this leads to lack of transparency. That's one problem. Another problem is that once everything is becoming mechanized, what about the roles that was being played by the cleaners, the sweeping community? What about them? Those people are also losing jobs in the process of having these machines in place. Another problem is that so much funding is going on into these machines. The problem is that this leads to privatization. When private companies are providing such machinery, naturally for the upkeep and maintenance, also private staff will be hired. The privatization of something as basic as sanitation makes it a profitable enterprise. And once that's done, what happens? in the wake of earning more and more profit, these private companies who are now taking up the job of cleaning are hiring labor on contract basis. When you hire labor on contract basis, you become nothing short of a vendor. You are practicing vendor system. Now, we all know that vendor system is associated with a lot of labor abuse. It does lead to social dumping. Why? Because the labor that's hired on vendoring system is a labor that's very lowly paid. There is no proper contract here. These are easy hire, easy fire laborers. Bigger problem. Who are these laborers? Who will be hired by these private cleaning companies? These will automatically be people who are ready to do any kind of cleaning activity, which will sometimes include even activities like cleaning manholes, cleaning soak pits, or cleaning septic tanks. All of these are associated with manual scavenging. So therefore, most of these laborers are Dalit laborers. So what kind of a thing are we talking about? The Swachh Bharat Mission came with the promise of eliminating manual scavenging, but today, in the wake of privatizing sanitation, we are again leading to some situation where most of the vendor labours are Dalit labours. So therefore, if the scheme was fully owned by the government itself, if the government was responsible for clean sanitation, things would be different. But if it is privatized, the private people will not care about who is being hired, from which caste and which cultural background. They will just hire about profits, and therefore we are not doing anything to eliminate caste system, but in fact we are only legitimizing or institutionalizing it further. That's one thing the article tells you. Another thing is that as soon as you privatize sanitation and public health, you are absolutely further perpetuating social inequality which already exists. You are not doing anything to change that. Now, Union government says that India is already OD+, open defecation free. But the reality is very different. A Comptroller and Auditor General report of 2020 is raising questions about it. It says that government claims that Swachh Bharat Mission is successful on this front, but not really, because the toilet quality that we are constructing at the last mile level, at various small district and village level, is so poor. It is so unhygienic that most of the times people do not use it. Another problem is that it does not have a constant supply of basic amenities like water. At the same time, most of these toilets again are not connected to any proper solid waste management system. In fact, there is no proper system of automated septic tanks. There is no proper system of proper dumping of solid waste. What happens in that case? Either in slum areas, in areas which are living in the suburban community regions, there is hardly any access to toilets. Plus, the toilets are very less in number. If they are there, they are not hygienic enough. And at the end of the day, they are not connected to any proper waste management system. There is no proper waste collection happening. And what happens in this case? If there is no proper waste treatment, instead of solving the problem, we are further only increasing it. It is also dangerous for environment in the long run. Now, talking about septic tanks, tanks where human waste gets collected, they are still being cleaned by manual scavengers. It is so sad that every day reports come in the news that just for rupees 50 or rupees 100, a labourer was ready to jump inside a septic tank to clean it, and ultimately it could lead to disability and death because it's completely poisonous. It's very, very dangerous. So therefore, what happens? Nothing much has been done on the ground when it comes to eliminating manual scavenging and caste-based inequality. Similarly, March 30, 2024, the Himachal Pradesh High Court said that there are just 5 sanitation inspectors in the Shimla Municipal Corporation, which comprises 34 wards. Imagine 34 wards large area and just 5 sanitation inspectors, which shows shortage of staff. When there is a shortage of staff, rather than recruiting more staff members and training them to take care of proper sanitation, most of these employees are on the verge of being retired. They will retire very soon. So in a state where there are more than 50 municipal bodies, only 20 sanitation inspectors are working. So this means that municipalities today are grossly understaffed. When they are staffed, they are grossly undertrained. And then when the government talks about privatizing the whole issue, it further only creates a problem. Rather than fixing the problem at the public sector level, we cannot haphazardly privatize that, because privatization will not be a solution to eradicating caste discrimination. It will only in fact perpetuate it further. That's what the article speaks about, that this is one area where Swachh Bharat Mission has not been successful. Now with that, we pick up another article. This is page A, and this corresponds with ecology. It says National Clean Air Program is a very ambitious program, but today when you talk about implementing the National Clean Air Program, specifically when you talk about implementing the Clean Air Action Plan, the CAAPS, they are not being implemented as envisioned at various district level in India, which is proven by the sheer levels of high particulate matter pollution in the air quality of Indian cities, particularly the metropolitan cities. So, since the air quality index repeatedly is manifesting the poor air quality level, it means that somewhere there is a loophole in implementing the National Clean Air Program. So the article begins by explaining you what is this NCAP. So the Indian government launched the National Clean Air Program back in 2019, and the intention was to cut the concentration of particulate matter pollution in the air by 20 to 30% by 2024 as compared to the previous high 2017 levels. Now we all know that particulate matter can be measured in various forms such as 2.5 or 10. Both of these represent different size of matters or different size of elements, small particles that when suspended in the air cause toxicity of the air. Now sometimes they are large enough to cause direct inhalation and therefore health crisis. Sometimes they are very small, but then they get suspended with other dust particles and other water vapor, other constituents of air, and then further increase the level of carbon and other toxins in the air. So what happens when the government felt that the target is difficult to achieve? The target was revised to not 2024. Okay, let's achieve the reduction by 2026, but let's make it 40% reduction in the total PM, particulate matter concentration in air. But what is this NCAP? NCAP is a program which commits that yes, this target shall be achieved by 2026, and the government will take many more steps. It could be by regulating the total emission of vehicles. It could be by ruling out vehicles that are already say 25 years old. It could be by encouraging the electronic vehicle segment more, or it could also be by various local initiatives at various district levels, which could include sometimes creating vehicle free zones in cities or better forestation. So whatever the different state governments plan, NCAP targets to achieve clean air by 2026. And under NCAP, the cities are required to prepare and implement every year one clean air action plan, under which all the planning towards cleaning the air shall be undertaken. But in reality, most cities are violating the PM level norms in India. They are not implementing the clean air action plan as promised under the National Clean Air Program. To facilitate better implementation, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change allocated a wholesome amount of rupees 10,422 crore. That's a huge amount for this purpose. Now, most cities, therefore, after getting the funding, proactively, on a very active mode, submitted their clean air action plan. But submitting was not enough. In reality, there was hardly any implementation that was done. Today, the record and the data says that only 60% of the allocated funds have been actually utilized to combat air pollution. Besides, according to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, 27% of cities are spending less than 30% of their designated budgets. The article highlights particularly Bengaluru, where not much has been done in allocating the funds for the desired purpose. So what could be the solution? The solution, as per the article, is a much better, deeper and a more systematic approach that is based on certain digital tools. What are these digi solutions? These digital solutions range from emission inventory called AI, air quality EQ modeling and source apportionment called SA. So what are these? These are all scientific digital tools. What do? They create models which can predict on the basis of, basically it's a machine learning based program which uses a heavy amount of artificial intelligence. And how does it use that? On the basis of ongoing pollution level, data is gathered, a modeling is done. These computerized models will help you predict that in the coming weeks, which will be the greatest source of pollution and in which zones of the city will pollution level be the highest. Similarly, these models can also tell you that in a particular district, what is the most critical cause of pollution? Is it because of some interstate issue, or is it purely happening because of some local source? So all these predictions can be done much better, and therefore it can create better identification and understanding of sources of pollution when these three tools are implemented together. For example, talking about emission inventory EI has a very microscopic detail into local pollution sources and which sources are contributing the most. Is it construction? Or is it because of toxins being released in the water bodies of the city? Could it be because of vehicle pollution? Or could it be because of waste garbage burning? So this picture enables you to better forecast future emission based on the modeling of your demographic shift, and hence you can stop it from happening much beforehand. Similarly, this EI also helps in shaping targeted pollution control strategies. For example, you cannot have a blanket strategy that in another 2 years we will reduce the pollution in a particular city. That's a very macroscopic strategy. That doesn't work, because unless you understand what is the root cause of pollution, you will never succeed in stopping it. So therefore, EI helps you by predicting that one particular activity is more associated with pollution, and then the government can come and stop that or take a monitoring action on that. For example, if you remember, immediately after the COVID pandemic, when pollution levels were quite high, say suddenly they increased in 2022 in the Delhi NCR region, the government had decided to put immediately a ban on any further construction until notified. Why was it done? Because we know that all the rubble and the dust that comes in construction activity also avidly contributes to pollution. And therefore, such targeted steps, when they are taken, whether it be to put a moratorium on stubble burning or any construction activity, or immediately to stop certain particular industrial activity, they have a very huge impact on controlling pollution for a definite period of time. So therefore, these strategies using EI will enable the government to understand what are better micro pollution control strategies to be needed to be implemented in a particular district. Similarly, they will also help you in understanding the nature of transboundary pollution. Every year, the Delhi government claims that it is not Delhi but the stubble burning that happens in Punjab and Haryana that contributes to major amount of pollution. So we know that the reason is transboundary pollution, not local source of pollution. Again, adequate actions can then be taken on that. Interstate cooperation, coordination, or better, you can say, intervention by the NGT, the National Green Tribunal. Such steps can be taken only when you know where is the pollution really coming from. So, SA studies, now talking about the source apportionment strategy, it helps you in a detailed analysis of contribution, including those which are situated very far away from your source. For example, if the sources of pollution in my city have now been investigated by using the EI model, now I can use the SA model to understand even 20 and more kilometers away what is causing so much air quality destruction. So we can therefore understand contribution of sources which are located outside the city, and hence you can do a broader planning of a much bigger area. Now, ideally, all the cities should look into EI and SA data and pinpoint the source of air pollution and then prepare better solution strategy. This will definitely achieve success because it is done on a scientific basis, not on a blanket basis, but on a real-time microscopic basis. Ground or root level basis should be sorted here. According to the portal for regulation of air pollution in non-attainment cities which have failed to implement these strategies, only 37% of cities have completed their EI and SA investigation. Remaining 63% do not have any idea about what is contributing to pollution into them. This is a very bad and a very dismal picture. Despite having the tools, if we do not implement it, despite having a huge fund by the ministry, if we fail to use it, how can we ever combat the pollution? That's what the article says. So the article says only if you are determined to achieve success of your CAAP plans, you must implement these tools to letter and spirit. Otherwise, their potential will never help you in mitigating pollution. Then, to ensure the success of National Clean Air Program, the article is talking about quick implementation of on-ground strategies, such as any governmental delay in implementing pollution mitigation program, better utilization of technical evaluations, It also highlights the importance of technical feasibility budgeting, time management and planning. We must create short-term targets. The government has to, at the central level, give certain targets to the state governments. That in every district there has to be a definite time period under which all these protocols like EISA using machine learning have to be implemented, and results therefore need to be achieved in a short span of time. The article also tacitly suggests that sometimes state governments could be promised a greater sum in financial allocation if they are ready to achieve these targets in a short period of time, but this will not be possible unless we solve the problem technically. So today we are talking about being in an AI ecosystem. So what's the point if we cannot use that AI and use all these strategies available to achieve the potential of NCEP? That's what the article argues. The next article is page 11, a very enlightening, a very, you can say, happy scientific development where a very powerful anti-venom or an antidote has been offered for the poison that causes the death of so many people in India every year because of Cobra bite. Now, it's very strange that today, as the world is gearing towards bigger pandemics, we are looking at very, very confusing, complicated, ununderstood or misunderstood diseases. We talk about pandemics related to COVID, we talk about disease X, we talk about antimicrobial resistance. We do not understand that there is an ongoing health crisis, which is a silent killer. Most of the times people do not give it much attention because the victims of this disease are typically those who are coming from vulnerable communities. Whether you talk about the sub-Saharan Africa or whether you talk about countries in South America, densely covered by tropical forest, or whether you talk about India, there is a silent killer among vulnerable communities which not only kills 4 lakh people, more than 4 lakh people, about more than 10 lakh people every year die, and more than 4 lakh people become permanently disfigured, disabled every year due to snake bites. And these are very, very prominent among forested and village areas where, despite construction of pakka houses, concrete houses, somehow, due to invasion in jungles, due to constant concretization of our forested areas, when we talk about animal-human conflict, now this snake bite, the problem of sudden snakes infesting the human inhabitation, is once again a very living example, a very real example of animal-human conflict. It also shows how people who are residing in rural areas, they find it so difficult to prevent these snake bites from happening. Now, usually what happens, targeted remedies towards snake bites are very rare in most of the hospitals. The proper anti-snake bite medication, which is known as anti-venom, is a medication that is always in demand, but it is very, very minimal when you see the supply side. What also happens is that most people who are susceptible to such snake bites, they most often succumb to these diseases because by the time they reach a nearby hospital, they already die in the process. Sometimes even young children are getting disabled because of these snake bites. So this is therefore known as a poor man disease. Although the WHO says that snake bite is a major problem that is causing mortality, it is the most neglected tropical disease it was back in 2017. Even today, not many people really realize the potential threat coming from snake bite and other health crisis which this can create. So what does the article talk about in specificity? The article therefore is saying that venom of snake in India is very, very diverse. Now, the problem in creating adequate medication comes from many factors. One factor is lack of adequate research. Another problem is, even if research is done, there is so much subspecies of snake available or prevalent in India that it's very difficult to find medication for every unique snake poison. What happens is that the venom of snakes are so diverse in nature that one medicine will probably not be effective in curing snake bite that has happened in another region. So regionally also we need to create a customized medication plan, because from one village to another sometimes the treatment doesn't work because the variety of snake, the variety of wildlife is very varied from one region to another. So the stark variation in the variety of venoms has caused this problem of adequate medication. Another major issue is that current process that is involved in creating antivenom is very cumbersome. Typically, once extracted from the snake's body, the poison is then injected into the body of a bigger animal, like a horse, for example. After that, the animal's blood is collected and then it is tested for antibodies, which are then used in creating medicines to cure snake bite in humans. Not only is this an ethical dilemma, but also it is a very lengthy, difficult process which creates delays in preparing the medication. So therefore, now the article says the scientists have achieved a very unique and a very, you can say, commendable feat. And this feat is that today the scientists are saying that they have started adopting a very revolutionary approach. How? They are using not large animals like horses to test the snake poison, but they are using synthetic human antibodies. This is a wonderful initiative. Not only is it less abusive to animals, but also it will stop the delays that happen sometimes even despite being tested on a large animal. When injected into human body, it creates adverse reactions, right? Because the microbiota of human body cannot completely be compared with that of an animal. So therefore, now when you are using synthetic human antibodies to test this venom rather than any animal, it is having much better efficacy. It's much safer for human usage. You can use it for human trials now with much better ease and comfort. So scientists are focused on today a specific class of toxin or poison which is known as a three-finger toxin, 3-FT-XS. This is found abundantly in the venom of medically relevant snakes, specifically like cobras and mamba snake. Again, very common cause of death among people in peninsular India. So these both snake poisons are found in this three-finger toxin. And through a lot of screening from a variety of human antibodies, scientists have identified today the 9,5-MAT5, which is effectively being able to solve the problem of snake bite because it neutralizes the poison that is found in the most prevalent variety of toxin, in vitro and in vivo, both, protecting certain mice that were studied in laboratory by giving them this medication. So this was able to prevent them from death caused due to snake poison. Now that's a wonderful achievement, as the article highlights. Now this antibody is extremely effective across variety of snake bites, including those of cobras and mambas from Asia as well as Africa. So there is a potential of even international, you can say, prevention and international coordination in sharing these medications now. So let's understand that today when synthetic human antibiotics are being used, not only can we have a real-time impact, also side effects will be very low, as well as this new customized venom, which has been taken after analyzing millions of antibodies, will be effective against many kinds of snake bites. So this therefore can prevent many deaths and disabilities that are happening in the poor communities of India today. Similarly, the study also says that this breakthrough in snake bite anti-venoming is today creating a scope for moving towards a universal, a global level anti-venom that will protect against a host of snake bites, and then this could promise final solution towards one such silent disease which was so far misunderstood and not adequately researched against. Now this article for prelims is page number 10. It talks about another path-breaking judgment of the Supreme Court. You might remember that Supreme Court of late has been giving a lot of jurisdictions based on right of people against climate change. Now recently, the Supreme Court had also said that right against climate change is absolutely a part of right to life, Article 21, and right to equality, Article 40. Besides, it's also a right under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, that is right against discrimination. So in the same light, once again, yesterday the Supreme Court has said that forest and animal will always come in the path of human development. But what we need today is a much better understanding and solution to human ecology conflict. We need to create a balance between both. On the one hand, wildlife protection, on the other hand, human life protection. Unless we create a balance between the two, the fight will constantly continue. The article and the question of why did Supreme Court say this is coming in the wake of Pabitra Wildlife Sanctuary. If you remember last month, in March 2024, we did cover an article in the Hindu which spoke about how Assam government is it's claiming that it wants to reduce the area of Pabitra Wildlife Sanctuary. Some people also called Pabitra as Mini Kaziranga. We know that Kaziranga is one of its own kind in Assam, which is famous for the population of one-horned rhinoceros. Similarly, Pabitra also has a huge biodiversity. It does have a massive elephant population also. It claims to have species of one-horned rhinoceros. Being such a unique habitat, the Assam government is bent upon reducing its area. Why? Because the history of this fight goes to ages back. The Assam government says that when the Pabitra Wildlife Sanctuary was created, the then Forest Department never consulted the state government of Assam. It never even informed the state government of Assam about the territorial boundary of Pabitra Sanctuary. What happened as a result? As a result, all the communities living in the boundary of this wildlife sanctuary, most of them are coming from marginalized communities such as the scheduled caste community, scheduled tribe communities. Most of these people became homeless. They were asked to evict, to leave the area because now it was a reserved area under Pabitra. Where will these people go? They were dependent on the forest of the sanctuary. Today, when the sanctuary shall be created and the people will be asked to relocate, where shall they go? They are completely dependent on the forest assets. They are completely dependent on this ecosystem. And therefore, there are also people who do not have a very remarkable level of education. They are dependent on the forest wholly. So where shall these people go? The forest department, hence, in creating Pabitra, by not consulting the state government at that time, has somehow done human right violation. This is the demand of the Assam government. To this, the Supreme Court had said that although it is a legitimate demand, but you cannot reduce the area of a wildlife sanctuary as pristine and as biodiverse as Pabitra, which will lead to some kind of vulnerability to the wildlife that's protected here. So this controversy is ongoing. So what has happened now? The article is discussing about what the Supreme Court has to say today. Supreme Court says that although both demands are valid, the demand for continuing the existing boundaries of Pabitra is important because it is leading to safety and security of our endangered species of wildlife, but at the same time, human population which is demanding that they should be allowed to live here. These demands are also legitimate. So therefore, the Assam government in this light had earlier constituted a special committee chaired by the Chief Secretary of Forest to survey and suggest what measures should be taken. Should the boundaries be altered or not? To protect the rights of wildlife as well as people. The Supreme Court later said that if you want to create such a commission or such a committee, it's good. But you must also include the Chief Wildlife Warden and the Field Director of Pabitra Wildlife Sanctuary in this committee. That's mandatory. You should do that. Because only then can we have a transparent judgment. Otherwise, it will be biased. Also, the Supreme Court said that even if the committee gives its report, it is very, very important to get a permission from National Board of Wildlife, which shall do a scrutiny of the investigation report of the committee, and only then the Supreme Court will announce a decision on what to do about the boundary of Pabitra. So this is the ongoing tussle that's going on. Supreme Court has therefore, in this ongoing light, today warned that animal-human conflict will be a great danger even in future, whether it be the cases of elephants trampling crops in Kerala and Karnataka, whether it be the cases of humans attacking these wildlife animals, these wild animals to protect their livelihoods and fencing their areas, which is depriving these animals of food and water. Whether you talk about either side, this human-animal conflict will pose a great danger not only to human survival and safety but also to our natural biodiversity, and therefore the very existence of forest and wildlife needs us to strike a balance between both so that neither do the vulnerable communities suffer of human population who are living near sanctuaries and wildlife national parks. At the same time, we can also protect the biodiversity of a particular region. So what is to be done in future shall emerge better once the committee gives its report. As of now, it is swinging somewhere in between, with the state government bent upon its demand and the Supreme Court also thinking that let the committee be out with its verdict and then let a proper investigation be done before we can even touch the existing boundaries of Pabitra. Next, and the last article here is page 1. The front page itself, it talks about polity. It says how the Supreme Court has satisfied. All those people who were claiming and questioning the transparency of electronic voter machines. Now, people who were creating a demand against outruling or against continuing the EVM had said that EVMs are opaque. They create a kind of bias. They are not as transparent as they seem. But Supreme Court has clearly today said that EVMs are agonistic. They do not identify any political party, any symbol or any candidate. They are in fact very, very fair, and they are completely mechanized and computerized. The manufacturers of the machine are using microcontrollers in the EVMs. These microcontrollers do not have any recognition of party name, symbol or candidate name. So therefore, why worry about something that is not reality? Why worry about something that is actually creating a very transparent process? And therefore, the committee of the Supreme Court clearly said that the demand of the people that some kind of tampering or some kind of malfunctioning can be done by human intervention in these machines is not legitimate. And Supreme Court gives a clear clarification that the buttons on the electronic voter machines are interchangeable, which means that arrangement of the parties or candidates of the button, they may also vary from one constituency to another constituency. There is no prospect of any kind of tampering. This arrangement is determined right at the manufacturing stage, even when the machines are getting created at that time itself. And manufacturers also have no personal idea and no prior knowledge of which party or candidate will be associated with which button. It's completely a computerized process. Then why worry about the transparency at all? Also, some people were demanding, some critics were demanding that the source code of the EVM should be disclosed to the public, but the court has strongly opposed it. Court says that there is no need to disclose it. It will further create a prospect of misuse. This is something that cannot be highlighted in public because it is a very, very serious secret information, and since it is to do with transparency of election, the integrity of voting process will be threatened if we go ahead and share this with people, so it cannot be done. And also it said that the query regarding the storage of EVM and VVPATS, where are they stored after the process is completed? So therefore, the court has also completely clarified that machines are totally sealed, and they are kept in strong rooms for a statutory period of 45 days after the counting of votes. There is absolute no prospect of tampering. Utmost security is provided here. The strong rooms are opened only after 45 days, that too when there is a written confirmation given from the high courts concerned of various states there where election petitioners are contesting the results. So therefore, absolute without the permission of high courts, nobody can reach out to these machines. There is no tampering possible, whether it be in the case of casting the vote or whether it be in the case of storing the machines. So in that light, the Supreme Court has given absolute go-go signal to the EVMs right now. Let's quickly have a look at the mains practice questions for the day. The first question says, examine the implication or the impact of Supreme Court's stance, Supreme Court's opinion, its judgment on the electoral transparency and integrity, and analyze the role of Election Commission of India in ensuring credibility, that's reliability, of the electoral process. A question that is 250 marks approximately, where you need to talk about the whole big controversy regarding EVM, and also you need to talk about the model code of conduct. Also you could talk about how the Supreme Court has clarified what all steps are being taken to ensure the integrity of EVM usage. Second question here talks about human-wildlife conflict, how this exerts a significant direct impact on both wildlife and nearby communities. So discuss the impact of human and wildlife conflict on both. The people who are the forest dweller community, marginalized often, tribal in nature, dependent on the forest. How are their rights impacted by creating of reserved areas? At the same time also, give a justification on the part of wildlife that unless protected and unless reserved, what can we do then to secure better protection for those vulnerable species in India which are already endangered? So therefore you can give a two-side argument in this question. Once again, 20 marks and 250 words. And now on that note, I shall take your leave for today's session. Thank you so much for being with us. See you in future with more such interesting sessions. Take care.